Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Last video I made, I was demoing my wet dry wet rig with the new Boss SDE 3000 delay pedal. There's a lot of talk about this wet dry wet thing going around, obviously because of the EVH SDE 3000 pedal that came out. A lot of people are looking how to make wet dry wet rigs, and there's a lot of maybe misinformation out there. There's a billion ways to do these wet dry wet rigs. There is no right or wrong. I'm gonna explain how I do it. I do not use the EVH version of the pedal. I have the standard one. For my rig, it works perfectly well. I've been using wet dry wet for years, so and I do it a little different than what most people would do with the EVH pedal. With wet dry wet, there's some issues that most people don't take into account. One is phase, because you may cancel frequencies out by not doing the wet dry wet properly. And now if you like that out of phase sound, which is fine, then you can do it that way, but then you know, that may not be the Halen sound. I will also expand on phase a little so that people understand why I choose to do it this way, and why most people that run wet dry wet do it that way. And you can decide whether to incorporate some of this in your own wet dry wet setup with the EVH pedal. Let's go back in the amp and see how I have it set up, and I'll explain a couple things. So back behind we're gonna look behind the amp now. I got it ready a few minutes ago. I removed some microphones, etc., so that we can show this. Anyway, there's the amp, and the case itself is basically the amp from a power conditioner. Just I protect the amp. I'm not gonna use this thing without a voltage regulator. And my Matrix GT 800 FX dual power amplifier. Okay, so Bray is obviously giving me the tone, and I will explain to you how I send it to the Matrix for the wet signals going to the left-right cabinets. Now, Bray is obviously my dry tone. This will be my wet tones, okay? So let's go back here and show there's the actual units. I use the H90 for reverb, micro pitch shift, or whatever it is that I want to use, and then obviously the SDE 3000. Now, I don't use the EVH version of it. I could use the routing options for my personal preference of the wet dry wet setup. I wouldn't really be able to use the EVH, you know, wet dry wet outputs on my rig properly, so I chose the standard version of the pedal. And yeah, so all the settings in there are what I come up with to recreate, you know, either the Van Halen tones or whatever it is that I want to come up with. Okay, so here's how I connect it. First thing comes out of the speaker out of the Bray that is sent into this. Yes, David Bray amps built line out. This is kind of like a load box, but I'll connect it to the through input of the line out box, and this will go straight to my dry cabinet right here. Okay, and this thing will give the amp its load from the speaker, from the central speaker, so the amp doesn't blow up. And what it does is it splits the signal between this through to speaker and this line out line, so that we can process the signal, so that the pedals can take the line level signal and process it properly, right? So what I have here is an actual 8-channel snake
that I'm using 7 channels for. Just one's not getting used, obviously. But I'm using 7 channels of the Snake right now. Just this is how I have it set up at this very moment. Not necessarily what I always do, but that's what I'm doing now. And so basically, this signal comes out of the line out. So we got basically we got the line through to the amp, right? Signal line output into the purple one, which is coming into the input of the H90, right? So the H90 does have the capability to process the, not process, but the internally send and receive signal through its inserts, so that we can use the SDE 3000 through the inserts of the H90 and process it together. So I will explain how, but so basically what we're doing is coming in to the input of the H90. We're coming out red and blue, green, left, right of the H90. These are the insert outs. And I programmed them as outputs 3 and 4 of the H90. Now I programmed that within the app in the computer of the H90. So I programmed the inserts. Both the H90 has 2 inserts. They are both mono, okay? So you have to use both to be able to use the SDE 3000 this way, okay? So I'm using both the inserts of the H90 to send to the SDE 3000. So here we go. Red and green into the inputs, red and green of the SDE 3000. Okay, so here I will process the signal as I want. I believe this is set up to my always on 390 right, 770 left delays. Okay, there you go. So that's my always on setting. The pedal itself, let's just keep going on the routing so that we don't lose track of everything. So I'm coming out gray and blue of the SDE 3000. These are my outs. They come into the Eventide H90 3 and 4 insert ins. So these are my insert ins 1 and 2, right? So, and I set the Eventide H90 effects will be reverb and micro pitch shift. For this particular setup that I'm using at this moment, I'm using H3000 style micro pitch shift. Anyway, all effects will be set up as parallel in the H90. So reverb and micro pitch shift are in parallel, and the inserts, which is the SDE 3000, will also be in parallel. So all effects are processed in parallel, and all effects in my setup are full wet. So the delay is kill dry, no dry signal comes out of it, and both effects in the Eventide H90 are set up to kill dry, no dry signal comes out. So all effects are 100% wet. Now you could imagine what this would sound like if we just let it be that way, right? So we do within the app of the HDE 3000, we can blend and mix all the effects, but as we want. So we set up however much amount of reverb I want, however much amount of micro pitch shift I want, however level of delay I want. right? So I set up all those levels, and then they're blended together, okay? And they come out the stereo 1-2 outs of the H90, and those will go into the inputs of the matrix, left, right, and the matrix obviously set up in stereo. This will then be sent through speaker outs of the matrix into my left right speakers. Okay, so that's my routing. Now before the H90, I used to do this with a parallel mixer, which there are some out there available that you can get. I had mine done custom, and it's just basically a little console. Like, you could do this with a little console as well. So because what you're doing is you're sending all signals into the console and then blend them together into one stereo out. Okay, and that's what's being fed. That one stereo left right is what's being fed into the matrix and on the speaker. So this is a very simple actual setup. It's like super small. I can like I said, I can just take this one unit and travel with it. I just travel with a huge wet dry wet rig. I just take that unit, my line out box, and I'm good to go. I just get whatever backline amplifiers I get to wherever it is that I'm going. For example, last week I was in Brazil, and I just took this, and it sounded beautiful. Okay, so that's how I connected, and I will explain now why it is that we do this in full wet. Okay, because it's very important to keep the effects in full wet. Like, you can have some phase, if not, you may encounter some phasing issues. Okay, also the H90 itself, within the app you can fix the phase within it. It does have phase flip and everything in it, so that you can fix phase and adjust the phase accordingly, because there will be latency within digital units like this.
So as I was explaining, the effects are set up full wet, right? Why would you want to do this? Well, as I was explaining, there's some latency in the processing. It might be negligible to the naked ear, but when you do place this in the actual stereo setting, like a DAW or live rig, right? Line array or whatever, you will have phase cancellation. I'll explain a bit about phase very simply. Not a lot of people talk about this. Most of us understand about sound waves. We've seen a DAW in a screen of a computer, right? So we basically see the audio signal of something like this, correct? Now when you actually enlarge these are sound waves, so they actually look like something like this, right? They will look like something like that, okay? When you enlarge them. Now, when you got a dry wet signal like this, I'm gonna draw two of these. Okay, this is our dry signal. Sorry about the lighting there. I'm not a very good video producer, but I'm an audio producer. So when you have two audio signals, they look something like this. If they're in phase, right? It'll look like that. They're in phase. This one's up. This one's up, this one's up, this one's up. It's down here, it's down here. So they're all in phase with each other. So you don't have a problem. Now, when this signal, I'm gonna make it a little exaggerated a little now. That's the dry signal. When with this signal is out of phase because it came out of the audio of the speaker later, and it's out of phase, they're opposites, right? So when they meet each other here, they will meet here, right? They're meeting at some points because they're not equal. They will cancel each other out, and that's when you get the phase cancellation that we don't want. Okay, so if your dry signal comes out at one point and your wet signal comes out latenced, which is the latency from the effects, you will have a phasing issue, canceling out frequencies. And that sounds kind of strange. It will lose bottom end. It will sound kind of like it's in a tube. So it will sound strange. Now, you may like that sound. If you do it in series, then if you send the delay already had its own latency, and then the pitch shift itself will have its own latency. So if you send one into the other, you will have even more latency, right? And they will be even more out of phase. So we don't want that. We need them to be in parallel for that particular reason. If you have any dry signal in that wet cabinet, it will be out of phase even if it's in parallel. But in parallel, we can go full wet. Since they're in full wet, then they're no longer the same exact signal coming out of the speakers. There is a difference. That's why it used the pitch shifter, 9 cents in one side, down with 9 cents in the other. So he's changing the signal, so now you won't have phase canceling. And then also the delay to give it that wide stereo image and reverb. I think that's part of his secret sauce. So that's how I do it. Full wet, like I said. When you have it full wet, you can imagine what it sounds like to have a full wet pitch shift signal or a full wet delay. Like if you have a full wet delay, you won't hear the actual playing. You will hear and it will sound later. That's right. So when you have full wet, then you have to adjust the level of the effects. So that's when you need the little mixer. So they're all in parallel, and then you mix however amount of pitch shift relative to your dry signal, how much delay relative to your dry signal, how much reverb relative to your dry signals. If you just put them all at the same level, then you're gonna have a mess of effects and everything. So that's why you need the little parallel mixer, so that you can blend these effects together. Same as we do in a production, right? For example, we're mixing guitars in an album, or vocals, etc. We usually record the guitars dry, and then we add the effects post-production. And what we do is we send it to an effects bus. Those effects are full wet, and we just add however amount of effect that we want relative to the recorded signal. And that's basically what they're doing with these, what we do with these wet-dry wet rigs. We're basically doing an effects bus in the two external speakers, right? So recorded signal, effects bus. So that's why I choose to do it in a full wet setting. And this is how I do it. I come out of the speaker out. I use the little load box to split the signal and process the signals into the speaker out. Now the EVH unit can do the wet, dry, wet without the little splitter that I have. If you have 3 equal amps with effects loops, you could just plug that thing in out of the effects loop of the main amp and send each signal to each external amp. The pedal does it by itself. With the unit, you don't need to complicate yourself as much. Just come out of the effects loop of the amp into the delay unit and bring out that dry signal back into the amp's return, and then the outs of the SDE 3000 left right into the effects sends of 2 other amps that you have, right? It would be really simple to do in that setting. With the Van Halen latest sound, he had dropped Eventide Harmonizers, basically only using the lexicon and the delays. And he was actually adding some dry signal in there. And somehow they did something in his rig that he could actually use some dry signal into his setup and not go out of phase. Somehow the unit, the EVH unit, does that. Those EVH settings do have some dry signal. Pete Thorne's video, he explains how it's mixed, dry mixed, or something like that, right? That was the way he was using in his Different Kind of Truth tour, etc. Now, back in the day, it was more like this, with his big Bradshaw racks and everything, you know, the SDE 3000 and then the HH power amps, right? Like I said, with that pedal, you can do something real simple. Like if you have 350, 150 amplifiers with an effects loop, that's real simple. So, and you will get the Different Kind of Truth sound very easily. Anyway, so that's basically it. I'll play a little bit and you can listen to how my rig sounds. So thank you very much. Hopefully this helps some people out there trying to create their own wet, dry, wet rigs. Feel free to ask questions. like, subscribe. I usually try to answer every question that I get. I like to help. So thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you like this. Thank you. Hey.